You're all welcome to be seated. You can have a seat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I want to think this morning as we end the book of Leviticus, what does it mean to engage with our Judaism? Right? We hear that a lot. We talk about it a lot. We say we want to be engaged. We want to engage with our tradition, engage with our learning, engage with the commandments. What does that mean in today's day and age? How do we do that? I want to think about that a little bit today. What does it mean to you to engage with our tradition, with our Judaism? Diana.
For me, at the meta level, and this is talked about a lot in the Tanya, is thought, speech, and action. How we think about things, how we talk about things, and then how we do the things.
Awesome.
So all connected.
So bringing this from the Tanya, from our Hasidic literature, thought, speech, and action, right? You know, the way we think about things, the way we talk about things, and the way we do things, right? That's how we engage. If we can somehow connect to our Judaism in the way we think, in the way we speak, in the way we do, it's a good start. Okay, what else? How do we engage in our tradition? Mark. Learning. Absolutely, right? Continuing to learn about our traditions. I was once asked, what is it that every Jewish denomination would agree on, right? Is it this particular law? Is it that particular law? And I was trying to think of something that I think that at a core level we all agree on, is that Judaism abhors stagnation. We always want to learn. It doesn't matter what you're learning. It doesn't matter if you disagree with this type of learning or that type of learning. But as long as we're learning, as long as we're growing, that's sort of a Jewish way of engagement. And I feel comfortable that every denomination would agree, learn, right? It's a good way to start. Awesome. Marge. So when we don't exactly know how to do it, then we engage by sort of doing the best we can, by acting as if it doesn't need to be perfect. We don't need to know every single thing. We don't need to understand every single detail of every single law, but we engage by just doing it, right? We don't wait for it to be perfect. It's that imagery of, a good piece of art is never actually ever finished. It's just they decide to move on to something else, right? But we could always keep working, keep doing, excellent. Anything else? I like these answers. How?
Well, for me personally, engagement is kind of immersion, because there's so much that one can find now about being Jewish, not just books, but the internet and so many groups, and it just all the questions and all of these selective choosing about what I can really relate to, or and if I can't really relate to it, maybe there's another way of thinking about it.
Yes, so understanding that we don't need to engage or relate to every single aspect of our tradition. And maybe there are things that we really resonate to, and maybe there are things that we don't. It's actually a question that I ask, and we ask usually at the Beit Din for those who are converting to Judaism, right? We say, what are the things that you really resonate to in our tradition, and what are the things that you still struggle with? What are the things that challenge you? Because both of those, engaging in both sides of that is actually valuable, right? It's not, I know everything is, but there are some things that are going to challenge us. And there's some things that are going to make us think, and that's good too. Excellent. Anybody else? So the reason I'm asking the question in this way is from the very first pasuk of our Torah portion today. If we open up to page 747, we are in Bekhukotai. And we're going to see this entire parasha is a giant if-then statement. For those who are computer programmers, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a giant if-then statement. If you do this, then all of this is going to happen. If you don't do this, then all of this is going to happen, right? That's the way it's set up, and we're going to actually be reading blessings and curses today that kind of put that in our minds. But the first pasuk, the first sentence, it loses a little bit in the English. In the English it says, if you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, then I will grant you rain in the season, blah, 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 blah. But the Hebrew actually is threefold. Im Bekhukotai telechu, if in my laws you walk, or after my laws you walk, ve'et mitzvotai tishmoru, and my commandments you guard or keep, ve'asitem otam, and do them. Then, blah, 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 blah. So the question is, what's the difference between these three things, right? We assume the Torah never writes anything down. The Bible isn't going to write something down superfluously. So if these three things are written there, what's the difference between walking in the laws, keeping the commandments, and doing them? Anybody have any ideas? What's the difference between that? I stumped you? How is that possible? So, there are a couple of different commentators that actually pick up on this. Rashi, being our most famous commentator, he starts to say, one might think that this denotes the fulfillment of the commandments. But Scripture says, actually, he's talking specifically about walking in my ordinances, right? What does walking in my ordinances mean? He says, you might say it just means to keep the commandments. But then he says, but it also says keep the commandments, so it must mean something else. So he says, Shetihiyu amelim batorah. Now this word amelim is a very interesting word. It's used very infrequently, and it means to really labor, to really engage, to really work, right? There's other words in Hebrew for work, la'avod, right? There's other words that we can use. But amelim, this word, means to sort of put your whole self into it and to really engage. And so what's Rashi saying here is to engage yourself in study. That's his argument. That's what he says this first piece means. Which is interesting because that's not the way that it seems to read, right? It doesn't say anything about study here. So what is it about study? What is it about Jewish study especially that we would think would elevate it to the level of being at the top of this list of blessings and curses? Go ahead.
I mean, there's probably years worth to unpack in that one question.
I know.
But to me, it's like it's an ongoing thing. It's not like, oh, you read like you read a book and you're done. It's not like, you read, oh, I read War and Peace. Okay, great, I put it away. It's on the shelf. It's always going. We're on cycles of study. Whether our cycle is the Torah, like we're doing now, we ended in Simchat Torah, we begin again. Daf Yomi is 7.5-year cycle. Rambam has a cycle. So all of like Tanya has a cycle. Like all of our studies, they keep going, and it's kind of like, I guess Ben Bakkai said, you turn it over and you turn it over and you turn it over. So we're looking for that, the depth of it.
So Diana's arguing, Diana's arguing that Jewish study is not just about, Jewish studying is ongoing. There's no time limit to it, right? It's another thing we talk about actually in the conversion program, which is, a lot of times people will say, well, I don't know everything about Judaism yet. Am I ready to convert? Well, I don't know everything about Judaism yet, right? It's something that you can't know everything about. It's a process. It's something that we continue to grow, continue to learn. It continues to develop over time. So this idea of cycles, I think, is very important. It also kind of goes with this idea of you can always learn something else, right? You mentioned one section from Pirkei Avot. I'll mention another that says, a person who learns their section 100 times is not to be compared to a person who learns it 101, right? You may have gone over that same thing 100 times, but every time you go through it, you see something new, you learn something new, you have the ability to grow. And that's a very Jewish way of looking at learning. It's not just about acquisition of knowledge, it's about development of us as a human being.
So it's the difference between doing it by rote, or just doing it, versus understanding the meaning.
So, yes, learning allows us, at some point in time, the first thing we learn is we learn how to say something by rote, right? We learn the blessing by rote. But as we continue to learn more, now we add meaning to that. As we start to understand it, maybe there's an easy level of meaning, but then there's personal meanings in terms of how we grow. I like that. Anybody else? No?
It's sort of in the context of Na'aseh Nishma, we will do and we will hear, that we have commandments, we have mitzvot, that in order to really fulfill them and to really understand them, we have to learn about them. And by learning about them and understanding what we're doing, then we really fulfill the completion of the mitzvot.
I like that. Right? So Na'aseh Nishma, that we learn, we actually do, and then we learn afterwards, right? That those two go together in Judaism in a very interesting way, not necessarily in an intuitive way, right? Normally it's we'll learn everything about it and then go do it. We sort of do it in the reverse. We say, okay, we're going to do it, and then, okay, we're going to learn, because we know that we're never going to stop learning about it. And if we waited until we knew everything, we'd never do it. So for me, this piece has always stood out to me as talking about something that I think is not uniquely Jewish, but is particularly Jewish, which is we have a concept in Judaism that is called Torah Lishma, which means the study of Torah for its own sake. And it's something that I think is sorely needed in today's day and age, because we, in the Western world especially, are trained to learn for a purpose, right? We're going to learn to pass this test. And then, by the way, usually 10 minutes afterwards, we've forgotten everything that we've just learned, because all we've learned for is to pass this test. And we've done it. Great. Done. Right? We're going to learn because we have to do something in our job. Yes, we want our doctors to learn how to perform the procedures that they are performing. Thank you very much, right? There's a reason for that. And in the Western world, we learn in order to do something. But in Judaism, we do that. But there's this additional layer of Torah Lishma, learning for its own sake, just to learn. Just to learn. And I think that's what this first piece is talking about. When Rashi says, Amelim, to you, Amelim b'Torah, right? To engage yourself in that way, it's not learning so that you can pass a test, learning so that you can become a rabbi, learning so that you can do any of those sorts of things, learning to become a bat mitzvah, right? But it's learning to be a Jew, to be a better human being. It's learning to grow. And that's something that is a powerful, powerful piece of who we are as a people. And we don't have the monopoly on that. There are a lot of other people who understand the power of that. But for us, it has that name. It's a category of learning. Torah Lishma, learning for its own sake, that allows us to recognize, I think, what it means here. If we can engage in that, I'm learning about my tradition because I love to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to be a better human being, right? That is going to keep us on the blessings side of this list that we're talking about, as opposed to the curse side of this list. That's where the if-then statement then comes in. It's not a checkbox of, well, you have to do this mitzvah, and you have to do that mitzvah. No, It's being engaged. It's finding a way to make it a part of who you are and make it a part of your life. Any comments or questions before we go through and read? Diana.
I just had one other question to your point, is that it can be very intimidating to jump into like some of this type of study, and it seems like, wow, like it's so far-fetched. But to Michal's point, it is very accessible. There is a lot of information. There's countless, infinite. But another Jewish concept to this is chavruta, which is having a dedicated study partner. And it's amazing because you can grapple with the text, you can say, I don't think this, or I don't think that, and all of a sudden you get those new chidush, a new idea, and that really comes with that partnership.
Yeah.
And I can't emphasize that.
Yeah, the traditional way of learning is not alone, right? It's bechavruta, it's with a partner, so that you have that dynamic of going back and forth and having somebody who may think differently than you challenge you. Open up ideas that you wouldn't have thought at. If you're just reading by yourself, then it's only your own mind that you're with. But if you study with somebody else, all of a sudden now you've got somebody that might share an idea that you've never thought of before. And maybe you'll agree and maybe you'll disagree. There are so many different ways to engage. And I just want to end with us thinking about a prayer that we said not too long ago in the Shacharit section, right? In the Ahava Rabbah, actually it's, the Ahava Rabbah section, right? It says, V'ten b'libeinu, and put into our hearts, lahavin ulahaskil lishmoa lilmod lilamed lishmor v'lasot ulkayem. That's, I lost count. 8? I think it was 8, right? That was 8 different ways. Et divrei Talmud Toratecha, your Torah. 8 different ways to engage, right? In the English, right? To understand, lahavin and lahaskil are both words to understand, one intellectually, one but in your heart, to listen, to learn, to teach, to guard, to do, to sustain. All of these different things are ways that we can engage. And I encourage you to think about the ways that you want to continue to learn, that you want to continue to grow. And if you take that away from our conversation today and dedicate yourself to learning something new, just not because you have to, but because you want to be a better person, that's going to be a good step. Shabbat Shalom.